KMJ.
From City Hall to Sacramento and Washington, KMJ's Conversation Continues with Aaron Abeytia.
Joining me this afternoon on KMJ is Gubernatorial Candidate Major Williams. California, of course, facing a recall election. Will Governor Newsom survive, or will we have a Republican or governor from any other party? Seems to be a lot of pressure on the governor right now, a lot of reversals of decisions that have led to the mounting recall effort. Major, it's a pleasure to have you today.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me on today to talk about some of these issues.
Well, we'll start with the recall effort. A lot of people have thought for some time that California is a state that is beholden to Democrats, and primarily those that are pretty far to the left. Sacramento has been dominated by one party for quite some time, but now we have this recall of Governor Gavin Newsom, and the pressure certainly is on and seems to be perhaps affecting the decisions that he is making that are reversals of previous controversial decisions. What's your take on the recall of the governor? How do you think these supporters of the recall are going to be in trying to remove him from office?
First, I would say I would just want to give a huge thanks to all the organizers and the volunteers of the recall effort, which is something that a lot of people thought was something that was impossible. And so the fact that they put in all their blood, sweat, and tears to make this happen and create this reality, I just want to say congratulations to them and thank you. But what I realized and discovered from my entrance into running for governor is that people are unified in frustration. So now it's crossed the barrier in the lines of it being about Republicans, Democrats, independents. It's truly about Californians feeling slighted by weak leadership, misguided decisions, and just over calculations of what a true leader should have done under that pretense of what was going on. And so, of course, it's election time. He's feeling the pressure. The signatures have been verified. So in true fashion, through strategy, he's going to start to try to create a new canvas and start to paint that particular canvas, which is going to show him in a better light, which is ironic. But I think that Californians are smart enough. Well, I know that Californians are smart enough to know exactly what his tactic is. And I know that once the time comes, they are going to recall this governor.
Some would say California had one of the worst coronavirus pandemic outbreaks in the nation, and now we are said to be doing remarkably better. I see that a lot from supporters of the governor, that he is to thank for many of the heavy-handed tactics that he used during the early months of the pandemic, mask mandates, closures, all the other restrictions, and even the color scheme that we are under now. But with his doing a 180 on a lot of things, namely masks, and then the pending reopening in the middle of next month, you would say that he probably is considering his political fate?
No, absolutely. Well, we know from the very beginning, a lot of this stuff was over politicized. It was something new to everyone in every industry. So there was a lot of misdocumentation, hence that the flu went away. So there was a lot of stuff that wasn't being reported. On top of them reporting deaths every single day, mind you, they never reported the fact that so many people recovered from the COVID virus as well. And that's a part of leadership, making sure that it's not about just fear. It's about teaching. It's about empowerment as well, and making sure that calmer and cooler heads prevail. And as a leader, he dropped the ball. He dropped the ball on that opportunity, should I say.
Talking this afternoon with California Gubernatorial Candidate Major Williams as Governor Gavin Newsom is facing a recall attempt. Major, one of the things that sticks out to me majorly about this predicament that the governor's in is that he is facing a lot of different opponents who come from the Republican Party, but certainly don't seem to be unified in their ideology. If you talk to Kevin Faulconer, if you talk to John Cox, if you talk to Doug Osee, Caitlyn Jenner for that matter, that's a campaign that is getting a lot of attention right now for several reasons. But how successful do you predict that the party can be when it seems to be so fractured?
Well, to be honest with you, it can't be successful. This is a recipe for disaster. This is a recipe for Governor Gavin Newsom continuing to be the next governor of California, which actually propelled me to do this, is that we need an alternative, especially under the Republican umbrella, someone who can unite and galvanize more than Republican votes, create an energy, bring something new and fresh, but also look and track history of successful models. The Democrats have been successful at targeting, at loyalty, and creating new things that get people excited. The Republicans haven't. Hence why my campaign has been one of the fastest rising movements in California's most recent history, simply because we have a relatable campaign that speaks to the lower income Black and brown community, but exists with the soccer moms and dads, but also can speak to the corporate and the small business owners also. But because a person like myself didn't ask for permission, I don't automatically get that support, or because I don't have a long-standing career or history in actual politics, when I always say everything is political. We've all been in politics since the day we were born.
One of the things that I often, when I see somebody say, I don't like politics, I don't do politics, I don't pay attention to news, I just want to have my peace, and it essentially, I would say, comes from the misconception that ignorance is bliss. But as we continue to hand more and more aspects of life over to the government, that then makes it political, does it not?
Absolutely. And then you wake up one day and you're a part of a socialistic society, and you're scratching your head, what is going on. Is because you refuse to act. And that's why I love what the recall represents. It is not a Republican recall. This is a California people recall who have all experienced the pain points of weak leadership and misguided decisions. And I always tell people as well, Governor Gavin Newsom could have made history being the best governor of all times right now. But he dropped the ball, and it's time to make him pay for that by voting him out.
Well, at this point, Democrats have both chambers of the state legislature. They have statewide offices. If the governor is ousted and a Republican replaces him, what are the prospects for some form of meaningful change really going to look like, given that those who are left of center and even far to the left are still calling many of the shots?
Well, when you think about it, so I use this analogy because that question comes up a lot. You have to look at it like you move into a different community. If any of these other candidates, especially career politicians or people who have been perennial runners, they have already existed in those circles, meaning they have either good or bad relationships in that particular space. Someone like myself, who is not beholden to corporate, not beholden to big tech, not beholden to past or previous relationships, I come with a clean slate. So there is an opportunity looking at me coming in as the next governor, saying, hey, I don't know who he is, but at least at this particular point, let me see what we can do together. Because what I realize, no matter what party in those offices, everyone has an agenda. And if we're going to play politics, if we are going to play business, so let's come to the table and get the negotiation and start looking for results and adding value to our state. And that is something they would know from day one I am willing to do, because I'm not beholden to anyone over politicizing certain things based upon other people's agenda. It's about the California agenda.
Talking this afternoon with Major Williams, California Gubernatorial Republican candidate. Major, a couple of issues that are significant here in the San Joaquin Valley are agriculture, the water situation, and then, of course, high-speed rail. A lot of land through here has been torn up by this ambitious state project, and a lot of people in the valley, be they Democrats or Republicans, feel as though Sacramento has overlooked us. The old cliche that it's just a bunch of tumbleweeds out here, that really it's all about the northern and southern ends of the state. Let's start with water. What would you do as governor for water and storage needs here?
So one thing I would do, I would shut up and I will listen to the people who have been a part of that industry for 20 and 30 years. I think that the people in agriculture and farming have a good idea on how to facilitate what needs to happen and what needs to be done. But what's happening is you have these people in suits that are so far and disconnected, not willing to actually listen. And even beyond listening, if they are listening, they're not willing to work with them and put together actions. So we are not on a cusp of not having agriculture in the next 20 years here in our state. Another thing is just acknowledging successful models in the past, like dams and recapturing water and lessening restrictions, right? And so some of those things have already been identified. And I'm working with different task force right now, so we can actually look at new options to capture water, also new dams that are already there but not being utilized in other areas where we can potentially put dams as well. It's just about being creative and having the intent to want to solve the problem. Right now, it doesn't look like there is an intent to even solve the problem or work with the agriculture industry.
Well, and that carries over into high-speed rail. You look at farmers on the west side, Kings County and such, there doesn't seem to be any willingness to actually understand the long-term ramifications of the decisions that are being made. And as it pertains to the bullet train, we've got billions of dollars in cost overruns. One side says, in the project, get rid of it. The other side says, no, if we just push ahead, eventually it'll be reality. What's your take?
So just like any business, at some point, if you are a great leader or if you are a CEO, every single year you have to make an assessment, checks and balances, accountability. Where are the holes that you need to fill? Where are the leaks? We know that this has been a hot topic and ongoing conversation. A lot of Californians, or at this point, are not for the train to nowhere, which is what they've named it, right? So knowing that as a leader or as a CEO, my take is let's put a hard pause or counsel that, because I know for a fact one of the main issues here in California is homelessness. And so until we bring mental health hospitals, better rehab facilities and wraparound services and clean off our streets and our parks and our highways and get these people reacclimated back in society, that is way more important than a pet project that's been funded and overfunded and who knows how it's been used or misused. So I would be totally against continuing forward with the train to nowhere when everyday Californians need help right now.
Talking this afternoon with Major Williams, California Gubernatorial Candidate. Major, homelessness is no secret, a big problem in the state of California from the southern end all the way up north to the border. Homelessness is run rampant, and there's a lot of discussions about it. Mayors from the biggest cities get together, talk about using public dollars to try to build more housing and other programs. But when you look at highways and urban areas, downtown areas, homelessness is a growing crisis, and really nothing seems to be working at this point. What would you try to do to tackle homelessness?
Well, I would bring a different insight, change the culture of how we even look at homelessness. One of the issues about those big mayors coming together and having those meetings, they're actually going in under the pretense of homelessness being handled like a business, when you should not look at it from that dynamic. Homelessness should be looked at simply as a service, because if you have a service, there's checks and balances and accountability automatically attached to it. When it's a business, you could get lost in the fact of looking for the incentive to raise more revenue for those pet projects that are not effective in getting people reacclimated back into society. So that's the first thing I would do as governor. I would change the paradigm of the conversation, because I realize a lot of these individuals lack imagination. These guys are scholars, or they've been in the system for so long, they don't know how to think outside the box or just acknowledge a box doesn't exist and get the proven results that are needed for our state. So that's the first thing. And I go back to what I said earlier. 3 components is going to be the foundation of how we start to put a dent in a homeless crisis in California. Mental health hospitals, drug and rehab facilities with accountability attached to it, and wraparound services, which is custom-made, tailored services for individuals, for the individual's needs, whether it's trade school, whether it's education, whether it's job core services or whatnot, because there's no point to get people rehabbed and get them better mentally, but they have no path. And that path, if they don't have those in place, is right back to probably where they begin at, which is a perpetual cycle of nothingness.
I realize our time is short, but I wanted to ask something that I think is worth noting, and that is you position yourself as an outsider, and that's something else that Caitlyn Jenner has built her campaign on, is the idea of being an outsider, a disruptor. That was certainly a part of the success of President Donald Trump 4 years ago. But with the election of Joe Biden, a lot of people have felt that there's been this longing to return to the political class, the ruling class, so to speak, kind of business as usual. Do you worry that sentiment is detrimental to outsiders?
I do worry, but I think that solely rests on the shoulders of the actual candidate, which is why I said Republicans have had weak candidates run in the past. If you're not going to be an effective leader or communicator, you don't deserve to win. You have to go out there and let people see you physically out there doing the work and show people that you care. At this point right now, I am the only candidate willing to go into different areas where Republicans refuse to go to because they don't want to work and earn those opportunities or earn those votes. So yes, that is something that I'm sure that many people think about. But that solely rests on the candidate if you're going to allow that to move forward. But we have to be effective messengers and be willing to actually do the actual work and understand that running a political campaign is not just billboards and yard signs. You have to go do the work, and I've been doing the work for the last 13 months.
Talking this afternoon with Major Williams, a California gubernatorial candidate, part of the large field of Republicans. Major, a pleasure to have you. We went a little longer than we had originally booked, but a pleasure to be able to talk to you about many of these issues that aren't going away, but are in fact getting bigger in the Golden State of California.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I look forward to doing it again.
Absolutely. You have a wonderful weekend. Hope to talk to you soon.
All right, you too. Take care.
Bye-bye. Coming up next on KMJ, America's Psychiatrist, Dr. Carole Lieberman joins us about mask paranoia.
KMJ's Conversation Continues with Abeytia.
Returning this weekend to KMJ's Conversation Continues, America's Psychiatrist, Dr. Carole Lieberman. We've had her on to talk about romance and Valentine's Day, also talking about Elon Musk and inserting chips into the body. Today we're talking about a new poll finding that 42% still believe that wearing masks outdoors is necessary, this despite contrary advice from the CDC. And Dr. Carole, a pleasure to have you back.
Thank you so much.
There's the political factor. According to this poll, 36% of Republicans and 37% of Democrats are saying that they want everyone around them to wear masks. But the contention doesn't seem to be going anywhere because even with these announcements that mask restrictions are ending, you still have the anti-masker crowd that is upset about them. And then you have the people that are clinging to them for dear life. From a psychological standpoint, what do we make of mask requirements and people's feelings on them?
Well, a lot of the confusion is due to the mixed and contradictory messages that have been coming out from the so-called experts. And so people don't trust what these experts have to say anymore. And so even though now for some it was appreciated, that they made the announcement that if you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask indoors or outdoors. For other people, it was, they couldn't trust that was accurate, that they would be safe. Some people also saw this as a sort of an incentive, why are they, you have to ask, and so much has become political about all COVID, all of these things, masks, lockdowns, and so on, that, yes, it may seem cynical, but then there's a question. Did they say that people who are vaccinated don't have to wear masks because this is a way to get more people to get vaccinated?
Well, going back to the start of the pandemic in March and April, I believe it was, of 2020, there were people asking then, should we be wearing masks and gloves when we go out in public? And Dr. Anthony Fauci gave an answer that is different from what he said. Now, we also then heard months later, toward the end of last year, early this year, that maybe even into 2022, we might still be having to wear masks. Obviously, that is contrary to what we're hearing today. Is this lack of continuity and general mixed messaging a real issue for the medical community, certainly for the rest of America? But with your experience, would you say that this is a real crisis for the so-called experts?
Well, it's only of their own making. People should have been honest from the beginning. I have a degree in public health. I know how public health campaigns are supposed to be run. And it is not the way this was run. It is not to scare people so that, and they listen to what they are being told to do, like sheep, but rather to encourage people, to give people positive advice. Like, for example, people could have and should have been, and I've been talking about this, doing things that increase their immune system. There are things that people can do, from eating healthy, nutritious food, to getting exercise, to getting out in the sun, to using aromatherapy candles, laughter. There are all these different things that build the immune system and that are positive and that are free for the most part. And those are the things that people should have been encouraged to do from the beginning instead of driving people with fear.
A lot of times going the natural, non-Western pharmaceutical type route is looked at as something that is crunchy, and there are a lot of conspiratorial beliefs really on both sides about things that are not a pill. Now, another thing that we hear a lot, and I saw a meme just this past week, somebody saying that Dr. Anthony Fauci is just like anybody else. On his desk, he probably has a plaque that reads, a cured patient is a lost customer. Is that something you subscribe to?
Oh, absolutely. There are people, it's already started coming out about his ties to Big Pharma and how he profits from more people getting vaccines. And now, yesterday or today, he was talking about there's news about his saying that we're going to need a booster before this year is out. I mean, what they're going for is telling us that just like the flu shot, we should get a booster vaccine every year for COVID. And really, there really hasn't been enough research, particularly for the 12 to 15-year-olds. That is something that really bothers me. It's not exactly a mandate, but it's certainly been strongly recommended to give kids now 12 to 15 a COVID shot. There's no way that there has been enough research on children of that age, and certainly not younger, because, there's barely really enough research for adults. That's still questionable. But for kids from 12 to 15 are growing. Their brain is growing. Their whole body is growing. There hasn't been enough time to be able to see what impact giving a vaccine at age 12 or 15 would have on the child later on, 10 years down the road. So I think that is a big mistake for parents to consider doing that for their children.
Talking this afternoon with America's psychiatrist, Dr. Carole Lieberman. Gonna take a quick break. Be back for one more segment with her.
KMJ's Conversation Continues with Abeytia.
Back for another segment with America's psychiatrist, Dr. Carole Lieberman. New polling finding that 42% still believe that wearing masks outdoors is essential despite updated guidance from the CDC. Dr. Carole, I heard another medical physician talking about the fact that the COVID-19 vaccines are emergency use vaccines, something that you use in a crisis, and that for people who have gone this entire time without contracting the virus due to social distancing, working from home, what have you, that it's not a good idea to just go take an emergency use vaccine and then go on resuming life as normal with no precautions. Where do you stand on that?
Well, first of all, the way I stand in general on all these things having to do with COVID is that I think people need to be able to make the choices for themselves. And, it's very confusing. For example, I was just after the CDC said that people who are vaccinated can go without masks. I was at a horse show this past weekend, and so there were lots and lots of people, and about 2/3 of them weren't wearing masks. Of course, you can't know, whether all of them were vaccinated or not. But what I found the most interesting was that people who were wearing masks had other people come up to them, strangers, and ask them or say to them, "So you're not vaccinated? Why aren't you vaccinated? You should get vaccinated." So this whole thing of people being judging and being, like the Karens we used to talk about at the beginning and telling people what to do, basically, it is going on in all different directions.
Is that something that you see as just a part of society at large now? Again, that's been a crucial part of the conversation, the idea of individualism and the right to choose what you would like to do. We've also had that discussion as it pertains to vaccinating against things like measles and such for school children here in California. The requirement for public school children to be vaccinated, that was a big controversy about 5 or 6 years ago now. Do we see that as just life going forward, everybody up in everybody's business, so to speak?
Well, everybody has been up in everybody's business from the beginning of COVID, or especially, when the vaccines first started, and people first of all, there was this craziness of if you got a vaccine, so many people, once they got the vaccine, they would put a picture of themselves on social media, like, look at me, look at I got a vaccine, yay me, kind of thing. It was really crazy. And then people would ask each other questions that were really personal questions. Like, for example, at the beginning, when it was only for a certain age group, I don't even remember, 65, I think, in California. So, if people asked other people, have you gotten your vaccine yet? It was basically asking them their age, or it was asking them whether they have an underlying condition that would make them have a more severe case of COVID. These are very personal questions. And yet suddenly everyone seemed as though felt as though they had the right to ask these things. And it was really inappropriate.
What would you recommend for those who are saying, I've been vaccinated, or I keep my distance, but I just can't fathom. I've seen people legitimately say this. I cannot fathom letting go of my mask. I just kind of like some people who were saying 6 or 8 months ago, you guys can all resume limited gatherings. I'm going to stay in my house until this is all over. Mm-hmm. And it looks like anxiety or even depression, play into this as well. What do you recommend as a psychiatrist to people who are struggling with that?
Yes, there are people who do feel that they want to keep their mask on for a number of reasons. One, because, they're not sure. I mean, because we've gotten so many different kinds of advice and it changes so quickly. People don't trust, as I was saying at the beginning, and so they're not sure that it is okay, really, to take their mask, especially since President Biden keeps wearing his mask. I mean, how is it that the CDC says that people who are vaccinated don't have to wear masks, and yet he wears a mask? So people are asking themselves that question. Maybe he knows something we don't know. Maybe we should wear a mask.
Talking this afternoon with Dr. Carole Lieberman, America's psychiatrist. New polling finding that 42% believe that wearing masks outdoors is essential, although the CDC and other government entities are saying the opposite of that now. Fascinating psychological conundrum that we're facing in this country as we fight this pandemic. Dr. Carole, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much, and look forward to having you back soon.
You're very welcome.
Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Coming up next on KMJ, we'll talk with political analyst Drew Allen about woke and cancel culture. Joe Rogan stirring the pot, talking about the dangers of cancel culture for straight white males. Be right back.
KMJ's Conversation Continues with Aaron Abeytia.
Joining me this afternoon on KMJ is political analyst, a Texas-bred, California-based conservative, Drew Allen, talking today about Joe Rogan's latest remarks that have caught a lot of attention about straight white males being silenced by, you guessed it, woke culture, cancel culture, canceling anybody who doesn't toe the line, so to speak. Joe Rogan has got support from people on both sides of the political aisle and everywhere in between, and this time it seems that he has rattled quite a few feathers among those on the left. Drew, a pleasure to talk to you about this today, something that, there's a lot to talk about when it comes to cancel culture.
It is. It's good to be with you as well. Yeah, I liken cancel culture. I say it's replaced the noose of the 1800s, and the victims haven't committed any crimes at all. And that's where we are. And it's very dangerous because it leads to mob rule. And that's what we're experiencing and witnessing today. And it's basically the eradication of law and order.
I've heard some on the left, oftentimes it's the right accusing the left of engaging in cancel culture and this whole woke silence that they're imposing on people with whom they disagree. But I've heard the left fire back and say, I think it's the right who started this looking, 15, 18 years ago at the burning of Dixie Chicks CDs and the idea that if you don't conform to what we wanted to do, we're going to have a book burning ceremony or what have you. I like the way you describe it, the modern day noose, but would you say that both sides have engaged, at least at some point, equally in cancel culture, or is this something the left is really going to cement in their legacy?
No, this is the left cementing it in their legacy. When it comes to the Dixie Chick CD, fiasco, the label didn't drop them. That was Americans exercising their right to say, hey, we're not going to buy your CDs anymore. What they're doing is far worse. The left likes to equivocate everything, just like they do with the Palestinians in Israel, right? They act like it's the same thing, and the Israelis are doing the same thing as the Palestinians, and it's not the same. We have the aggressors in the Democrat Party who are coming after anyone who doesn't subscribe to their idea of free speech, which is not free speech at all. It's saying whatever the left and Marxists want them to say. We just saw Lieutenant Colonel Lohmeyer essentially fired from his job at Space Command because he came out and told the truth. So the truth is now verboten in society, according to the left.
Talking this afternoon with political analyst Drew Allen, a Texas-bred but California now-based conservative author and speaker. He has a weekly blog at drewthomasallen.com. Joe Rogan catching quite a lot of attention, talking about how straight white males are being silenced by woke culture. Drew, a lot of times we hear this also tied in with white male privilege, the idea that men who are straight and are born of European descent are, by virtue of their gender and ethnicity, at an advantage over people of color or those that are outside of gender norms. But you see, there's certainly a percentage of straight white men who are on the left in the Democratic Party. Joe Rogan caught my ear by talking about how it's never enough. You can't appease what those on the right would call the mob. Do you see more middle-class, white, straight males, say in the Midwest, leaving the Democratic Party, if there are any left at this point?
Certainly not. Certainly not. But, Americans need to understand this is far more dangerous than one person being canceled and losing their unalienable rights due to the Democrat Party's attacks. Honestly, what's happening today is not unprecedented in our history. I mentioned before that cancel culture has replaced the noose, and I believe that's true because if you study history, Abraham Lincoln gave an address called the Lyceum Address when he was a 28, 29-year-old state senator in Illinois. And he talked about this proliferation of mob justice throughout the country. And he warned that it was going to lead, step by step it goes until, the edifice erected to protect Americans is gone and eradicated. And it leads to anarchy. And that's where we're headed, because at some point, even the most peaceful, law-abiding citizens who want nothing more than to enjoy the liberty that we enjoy and prosperity in this country are going to look at their neighbors and family members under attack and seeing no government come to their defense. In fact, the government attacking them is going to become detached from the idea of democracy and our government in this country. And, I don't need to remind people what happened 20 years after Lincoln warned the American people. It led to a civil war.
Now, for that matter, those who are kind of promoting this idea of anarchy, do you think they're really missing the mark in the sense that if there is not this ever-increasing government, which seems to be what a lot of people on the left desire, that then takes away your right to have this big central state do your bidding against your political opponents? Is the irony there lost?
Well, it is. I mean, you and I have rational minds, and millions of Americans do as well. And you can look at the French Revolution and what happened. And that's essentially what Abraham Lincoln was talking to, in the general sense, because, these Democrats are fooling themselves, because it's like, look at the mayor of Portland, right? He defended Antifa, never did it, raised a finger to stop them. And then they put out a jihadi style video with an Antifa masked person, basically calling for putting a bounty on his head. And this is where this leads. And the Democrat Party, they're so power hungry and crazed totalitarians that they miss the point that at some point, the same thing that they're encouraging is going to come back for them. Nobody's safe in a world in which mob rule pervades. But, they're targeting white Americans specifically. And it goes back to Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, actually, because, the white middle class in this country is still the greatest voting bloc in this country. And Saul Alinsky said, we've got to awaken, he said, this white middle class and basically bring them to embrace this Marxist cause and to bring about a revolution in this country. Because no matter how many minority groups they can activate to vote for them, the problem remains they still have to get white voters. And, that is how sinister it is. And you don't have to look any further than reading Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals to find the truth.
Talking this afternoon with political analyst Drew Allen, a Texas-bred, California-based conservative author and speaker. Joe Rogan perking up a lot of ears with his comment that straight white men are at risk of being silenced by woke cancel culture. Drew, looking at younger people, college campuses and such, you'll see videos of Ben Shapiro or Candace Owens or other younger right-of-center people going onto college campuses giving their speech and maybe engaging in a debate with some of the younger left-leaning college students. But that seems to be a complaint from a lot of people on the right, is that colleges are breeding grounds for cancel culture, for silencing your opponents, communism, socialism, go on down the list. And aside from some of the right-leaning campuses, Hillsdale College, other things like that, what do you think the goal should be for those who are wanting to fight against the leftist indoctrination that they see on college campuses?
Well, unfortunately, it's going to take sacrifice and a long-term vision. I'll get to the point in a second, but this ties in. The Democrat Party is our master strategists. They are campaigning 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, every year, to win elections and infiltrate the bureaucracies, the educational systems, the CIA, the FBI, everywhere you look with Marxist ideology. And Republicans, we have no one else to blame but ourselves. I'm 34 years old. This began long before I was even born in '87. But this is the problem we have. We have to fight these battles and win them. Because if we can't take back the institutions, we just have to be realists. As long as the left controls and owns the education system and the universities in this country, we can't get past this problem. Because unfortunately, those are the indoctrination mills for our young people, and they're coming out and they don't know any different. And unfortunately, Republicans have been really hapless and useless in terms of fighting back and educating people about what's actually going on. We've got Mitch McConnell's and people like this, these rhinos in our party, who have never converted any Democrat to our side, to the truth. What we need is a combination. Every American citizen has to become a combination of Ronald Reagan and Rush Limbaugh, in my opinion, because we've got to become master communicators. We have to dismantle the arguments of the left and then explain why their solutions are detrimental to our society, and then provide our own solutions and make it clear to the American people what the benefits are going to be. Only in doing that can we start to fight back this Marxist cancer that plagues our society.
It used to be said that the left was in favor of increasing the role of government, and the right generally wanted to keep things limited and simple, or at least more simplistic. It's arguable as to how simple you can keep something in the federal government these days with all the bureaucracy. But now those who are, say, maybe a little bit more fiscally conservative and socially kind of liberal or not caring, say, hey, look, the right doesn't want any less government than the left wants. The right just wants to be in control of it. I don't want either of them controlling my life. Is that a sentiment with which you agree?
I absolutely agree, but I think it's gotten to a point that's actually worse than that today. I think that Republicans now don't even care so much, the rhinos, in terms of actually controlling the House or the Senate or the presidency or any of it. They just want to maintain their status quo positions in Congress. And that's how bad it is. If you listen to these rhinos in the Republican Party, 35 of them just voted with the Democrats to condemn themselves and basically affirm this false narrative that, Trump voters are somehow domestic terrorists. It's actually unconscionable and unfathomable that a Republican could vote for this. And that's 35 people in Congress that just did that. So it's very dangerous, and we have to get rid of these people because, the Republicans' worst enemy is themselves. As 2022 is shaping up more and more to be a landslide victory for Republicans, there are 2 points to be made. If these rhinos aren't kicked out of the party and we don't make it a radical constitutional party or an originalist party that stands for freedom, people aren't going to vote, and we're going to destroy our chances of winning, assuming HR 1 doesn't pass. And And the secondary thing is that even if we do win in 2022 or even 2024, as long as the rhinos are in the Republican Party, nothing will change.
Talking this afternoon with political analyst Drew Allen, a Texas-bred, California now-based conservative author and speaker. You can find his weekly blog postings at drewthomasallen.com. Drew, a pleasure to have you today talking about cancel culture, wokeness, and the rise of a lot of people see as authoritarianism on college campuses and that infiltrating the American political system. A pleasure to have you. Hope to have you back sometime soon.
Anytime. It's an honor to be with you and a privilege to be able to talk about such important issues.
Absolutely. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too.
Alrighty, bye-bye. That'll do it this weekend for KMJ's Conversation Continues. Thank you for joining me. Hope you'll come back next week at 3 o'clock. You can find me on Facebook or Twitter at Aaron Abeytia, AARONABEYTIA. Have a great weekend.
The conversation continues on KMJ with Aaron Abeytia.